Hello. When the Oyasa, or archangel of the planet Venus, descends upon the manor in that hideous strength, Jane sees a dazzling brightness flowing from Arthur and Camilla Denniston, as if the god and goddess in them burned through their bodies and through their clothes and shone before her in a young, double-natured nakedness of rose-red spirit that overcame her. It's a kind of mini transfiguration of the married couple as a couple in this novel, which is partly about love and marriage. The spiritual reality of their being shines out for a moment in this world. In his sermon, The Weight of Glory, preached in 1942 in Oxford, Lewis famously said, "It's a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses, to remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you can talk to may one day be a creature which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship." And 2 years later, in one of his broadcast talks, he continued the theme. "If we let him, for we can prevent him if we choose, he will make the feeblest and filthiest of us into a god or goddess, a dazzling, radiant, immortal creature, pulsating all through with such energy and joy and wisdom and love as we cannot now imagine. A bright, stainless mirror which reflects back to God perfectly, though of course on a smaller scale, his own boundless power and delight and goodness." You see it in his last novel, Till We Have Faces, based on the Greek myth in which the mortal Psyche becomes the bride of the god Cupid. When her sister, Orual, sees her in her married, elevated state, Psyche appears so young, so bright-faced, joy in her eyes and limbs. And this again is the resurrection body that Lewis thought an important and neglected doctrine of Christianity. From the top of her head to her naked feet, she was bathed in life and beauty and well-being. It was as if they flowed over her or from her. It was no wonder Bardia had worshipped her as a goddess. The very rags served only to show more of her beauty. All the honey sweetness, all the rose red and the ivory, the warm, breathing perfection of her. She even seemed, but that's impossible, I thought, taller than before. And at the end of the book, when she appears transformed into full goddess, Psyche sheds a fragrance, wild and sweet. "Youth seemed to come into my breast as I breathed it," says her sister. And of course there's still more of this in The Great Divorce, which is set on the borders of heaven itself. The bright spirits that come to greet the busload of day trippers from hell all seem quite ageless to the narrator. He notes that the ones who appear naked seem somehow to be adorned, and the ones that are clothed seem to wear their clothing as a kind of vibrant spiritual extension of their glorious bodies. And some spirits are almost blindingly white. And the immediate instinct of the visitors is either to huddle together or scream and run for the bus. And though they seem in many ways rather overwhelming, there's a lot of joy and laughter among these bright spirits. The face of the one who talks to the murderer Len, for instance, the narrator said, made me want to dance. It was so jocund, so established in its youthfulness. And the spirit speaks with laughter in his voice. Mirth danced in his eyes. The greatest spirit that we're introduced to is Sarah Smith. She comes with a procession of other spirits who dance and scatter flowers before her and sing. "If I could remember their singing and write down the notes," says the narrator, "no one who read that score would ever grow sick or old." And Sarah bears the almost visible penumbra of her courtesy and joy, which produces in my memory the illusion of a great and shining train that followed her across the happy grass. She wears her courtesy and joy almost like a divine wedding dress, and her face is unbearably beautiful. Love shone not from her face only, but from her limbs, as if it were some liquid in which she'd just been bathing. Last week I quoted from Letters to Malcolm, which says, "At present we tend to think of the soul as somehow inside the body, but the glorified body of the resurrection, as I conceive it, the sensuous life raised from its death, will be inside the soul." And perhaps it's this that's reflected in the shining aura of joy which is visible around Sarah Smith. It's her soul bodied forth. At one point, we're shown the actual real-time transformation of a rather dark and insubstantial ghost who arrived with the bus trip into bright spirit. This is its glorification, its reception of the resurrection body. And the man, to start with, carries the lizard of lust on his shoulder. Then when he eventually submits to the death of the lizard, he becomes part by part a solid glory. Arm, shoulder, legs, hands, neck, golden head, huge, naked and bright. And from him flows liquid love and brightness. And the dead lizard too has been transformed into a glorious stallion. And in joyous haste, the young man leapt upon the horse's back, and they race off like a shooting star, which we track up the mountain until they vanished, bright themselves, into the rose brightness of that everlasting morning. And so we look forward to that day, that everlasting morning when sorrow and sighing will flee away, and the Son of Man cries with great joy, "Behold, I make all things new." Or in Aslan's words, the dream is ended. This is the morning. Or in the words of Bob Dylan, we'll be forever young. In Perelandra, the second of the cosmic trilogy, when Ransom returns from the planet Venus after all his adventures in that unfallen world and his encounters with higher beings, he is, we're told, almost a new Ransom, glowing with health and rounded with muscle and seemingly 10 years younger. No more grey hairs. And then in that hideous strength, the next book, because he's been to Perelandra, where paradise is still going on, Camilla explains to Jane, he will never grow a year or a month older again. And he won't die. He'll be taken away, presumably like Enoch or Elijah in the Bible. Ransom's actually approaching 50, but he looks no older than 20. His golden hair and beard somehow seem to become a focal point of all the light sources in the room. And his skin is young. He exudes youthful strength. And Jane finally decides he's ageless. And after a while, pressing home the point, we're told the director looked at her with laughter in his eyes. It is impossible, thought Jane, to regard him as old. And then there's his voice. The voice also seemed to be like sunlight and gold. Like gold, not only as gold is beautiful, but as it is heavy. Like sunlight, not only as it falls gently on English walks in autumn, but as it beats down on the jungle or the desert to engender life or destroy it. And then in Narnia, the wild breath of Aslan sweeps Lucy and Eustace away to the mountain at the end of the world in the silver chair. And there they see the old frail king, Caspian, the 10th of Narnia, lying dead in a river. And his funeral music still going on in the background. But a drop of the lion's blood does it, one precious drop into the waters over his body, and in a sort of magical time lapse it grows rapidly younger before their eyes. The wrinkles smooth out, and the beard gets darker and shorter and disappears, and the skin freshens. And Caspian leaps out of the water as if he's rising from the waters of baptism, which of course enact burial and resurrection, rising to newness of life. And he's once again brimming with life. The risen Caspian is clearly very young. It's hard to tell just how young he is because it says there are no particular ages in Aslan's country. But death and decay have been reversed, that's the thing. Sorrow too is reversed as Caspian gives a great laugh of astonished joy and the funeral music stops forever. There are a lot of hints of this in other parts of the Narnia Chronicles. Ramandu, that old star near the end of the world in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader, is receiving his youth a good deal more slowly by virtue of the fire berries brought him each morning from the Valley of the Sun. And when he's as young as a newborn child, he will rise again into the night sky. The bottle of cordial given to Lucy by Father Christmas in the Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, which heals, was made of the juice of one of the fire flowers that grow in the mountains of the sun. It is no doubt similar to the berries which bring youth to Ramandu. The liberation of Narnia in Prince Caspian, even sad old donkeys who had never known joy grew suddenly young again. In the new world of the last battle, Tyrion meets the 7 kings and queens of Narnia, transformed and young. And how young, again, is hard to tell. When Tyrion sees Jill, at first he thought she looked older, but then didn't, and he could never make up his mind on that point. And the oldest queen he meets, the Lady Polly, is not really old. She has no wrinkles, no grey hairs. And the Lord Diggory says that at the moment of entering that new world, he and Polly no longer felt old. Their bodies were unstiffened. It really is what Diggory had wished for in The Magician's Nephew, the land of youth. And so we too look forward to Resurrection Day. As Paul says in Romans, we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for our adoption to sonship, the redemption of our bodies. Lewis wrote to one woman just 5 months before he died himself. Think of yourself as a seed patiently waiting in the earth, waiting to come up a flower in the gardener's good time, up into the real world, the real waking. I suppose that our whole present life, looked back on from there, will seem only a drowsy half-waking. We are here in the land of dreams, but cockcrow is coming. It is nearer now than when I began this letter.